This is Singapore. Can you imagine? It is 13,673 times smaller than US. But it has higher GDP per capita than the United States, where US has 85,373 GDP per capita and rank 8th. On the other hand, Singapore has 133,737 with second rank. But how Singapore is so rich? You don't want to miss this video. From poorest British colony to richest country, it is an inspiring story of Singapore. Today, Singapore stands as a global hub of prosperity and innovation, renowned for its advanced infrastructure, economic, and high quality of life. As one of the world's leading financial centers, it attracts global businesses with its strategic location, low taxes, and robust regulatory framework. But the condition wasn't the same for Singapore. If you look at a GDP graph, you can see how Singapore has grown a lot since the late 1980s. While researching this topic, I found an interesting story of Singapore. In 1967, this country was so desperate it requested the British forces to stay within its borders for security and employment. The local economy was struggling, and many citizens relied on jobs provided by the British military bases. So, how Singapore transformed completely? All of this happened because of one man, Lee Kuan Yew. Have you ever wondered how one leader could change the destiny of a nation in such a short time? How did he transform Singapore from a struggling city-state with no natural resources into a global powerhouse? What were the challenges he faced, and what strategies did he use to overcome them? Let's find out. Singapore's modern history begins with its founding as a British trading colony in 1819 by Sir Stamford Raffles. Raffles established Singapore as a British trading post. The island's free port status attracted immigrants, traders, and merchants from around the region, fueling its rapid growth. Singapore flourished as a trading post due to its natural harbor and strategic position along major trade routes. During World War II, Singapore fell to the Japanese, enduring a period of occupation marked by hardship and brutality. During this time, life for civilians was incredibly tough. Thousands of people were forced to work in harsh conditions, basically treated like slaves, just to support Japan's war effort. Women faced especially terrible hardships, often forced into roles they never chose, treated as commodities rather than human beings. After Japan's defeat in 1945, Singapore reverted to British control, but faced challenges of post-war reconstruction, economic instability, and social unrest. People were suffering with different diseases, poverty, food shortage, high unemployment, and opium addiction. Gambling and prostitution were seen all around Singapore. British military administration helped people to overcome the situation. In 1959, Singapore held its first general election under a new constitution that granted increased autonomy. The People's Action Party won a landslide victory, and Lee Kuan Yew became the first Prime Minister of Singapore. He thinks that small country like Singapore cannot exist independent, so he merged Singapore with Malaysia in 1963, thinking that being part of a bigger federation would bring more stability and opportunities. But after just 2 years, in 1965, they decided to go their separate ways. The reason was that there were deep disagreements and tensions between Singapore's leaders and the leaders in Malaysia. But that wasn't the end of Lee Kuan Yew's challenges. In 1966, Singapore faced another big problem. The British military, which had been in Singapore for a long time, announced they were leaving by the mid-1970s. But here's the twist: Singapore wasn't ready to see them go. Why do you think that was? Well, Singapore depended a lot on the British military for jobs, and there was another big issue. Singapore didn't have its own army for defense. So Lee made a bold request. He asked the British to stay a bit longer so Singapore could get things in order before they left for good. It was a critical moment for Singapore's future independence and security. British agreed and announced the deadline to leave in 1971. Now starts the remarkable journey of Lee Kuan Yew.
How did he manage to transform a nation struggling with poverty, unemployment, and drug addiction?
At first, he focused on building good relationships with neighboring nations. So, on August 8, 1967, he joined forces with the foreign ministers from Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand to create ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. In the same year, he introduced national service to form own army force. He made compulsory for every boy who reaches 18 years should join army, defense forces, or national service. Also in 1975, Li and the Premier of the Republic of China, Chiang Ching-kuo, signed an agreement allowing Singaporean troops to train in Taiwan. This agreement was known by the codename Project Starlight. Secondly, he established the Jurong Town Corporation, JTC, in 1968 to transform Jurong, a swampy rural area, into an industrial hub where companies of other countries will come and establish their company there. And to attract more companies, he gave companies offers. He gave some companies tax-free offers, and also gave tax holiday offer where companies have to give tax after some years of establishment, and also made tax rate low. Did it work or not? Today, Jurong is a bustling industrial and commercial hub, home to numerous multinational corporations and major industries. Some prominent companies established in Jurong include Shell, ExxonMobil, Siemens, Nestle, Pfizer. Li also noticed that people in Singapore were divided, interacting only within their own communities. So, he declared that Singapore would be a multiracial country. Also, to foster unity, he established the Housing and Development Board, HDB. What was the main purpose of the HDB? It was to build housing for the many people, about 70% of the population, who lived in slums. And as of today, about 80% people lived in public housing. Now, he needs the skilled workers in different fields, so in 1979, the Go Keng Sui Report on Education was implemented. The main focus of this reform was to emphasize technical and vocational training to better prepare students for the workforce. Why was this change important? Singapore recognized the need for a skilled workforce to support its industrialization and economic development. By focusing on technical and vocational education, the government sought to equip students with practical skills that match the needs of the growing industrial sector. So, the next challenge was to improve the economy of the nation. To improve economy, Li established the Economic Development Board, EDB, to attract foreign investment. And by the 1970s, companies like Texas Instruments, Hewlett-Packard, and General Electric established a presence, making Singapore a major electronics exporter. Workers were retrained to adapt to foreign companies, and new industries like steel mills, Neptune Orient Lines, and Singapore Airlines were launched. And by 1970s, unemployment was hardly seen. As a result, foreign companies flourished, and by 2001, they contributed 75% of manufactured output and 85% of manufactured exports. Also, by 2019, Singapore's infrastructure was ranked the best globally, scoring 95.4 out of 100. During this time of industrial evolution, Li faced many problems, including the 1973 oil crisis, which highlighted the need for economic diversification. GDP growth slowed slightly to 8.5% annually, but unemployment remained near 0% and productivity improved. The government shifted its focus to technology, education, and financial services, investing in these areas to sustain growth. Li established Singapore as an international financial center, ensuring reliable social conditions, top-class infrastructure, and skilled professionals. Throughout his tenure, Li focused on economic development, connecting it to Singapore's image as a garden city, which remains a hallmark today. Singapore's greenery has become a tourist attraction now. Corruption is a major reason why many nations grow slowly. Li knew this and wanted to make Singapore a corruption-free nation. So, he introduced legislation that empowered the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau to conduct arrests, searches, call up witnesses, and investigate bank accounts and tax returns of suspects and their families. Believing that well-paid ministers would ensure a clean and honest government, Lee supported high salaries for officials. As you can see, the salary of present Prime Minister of Singapore, Lawrence Wong, that is approximately $1.6 million, which is significantly higher than the US President Joe Biden. And if someone is found corrupt, then the heavy punishment is given, which included a fine of up to $100,000 and up to 5 years in jail. Today, Singapore is ranked among one of the least corrupt countries in the world, consistently ranking in the top 10 of Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. Tourism is a major industry for Singapore's economy, attracting 18.5 million international visitors in 2018, more than 3 times the country's population. Tourism directly contributed about 3% to 4% Singapore's GDP annually. Today, Singapore is recognized as cleanest and safest country in the world. Through prudent economic policies, investment in education and infrastructure, and a proactive approach to attracting global talent and businesses, Singapore has transformed itself into one of the wealthiest nations in the world. As we reflect on Singapore's remarkable success story, it becomes clear that a good leader can totally change a nation. The government is also committing significant funds towards innovation, including $3 billion investment in the Research, Innovation, and Enterprise 2025 plan, and a $1 billion commitment to AI initiatives over the next 5 years. Do you think Singapore will stay on top in the future? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and make sure to subscribe for more insights and updates. You don't want to miss what's coming next.